Proponents of marijuana legalization are promoting new studies showing the drug may prevent or cure a number of diseases. Some of these include forms of cancer. Some research supports the idea that marijuana may help treat asthma along with other diseases. Critics of medical marijuana claim there are no proven health benefits from the plant. The federal government has made it nearly impossible to study the possible benefits of cannabis in the United States. Studies conducted in several other countries, however, show significant effect on a number of disorders. A measure requiring the labeling of GMO foods also recently failed in Washington state and California. Both Propositions 37 in California and Prop 522 in Washington were defeated. Both bills also face significant opposition from political groups. In all, opponents of the measure spent $22 million defeating the plans. Robert Scott Bell is an investigative journalist. He's the host of his own radio show, The Robert Scott Bell Show. On his program, he features stories about health freedom. Robert Scott Bell returns to WHDT World News tonight to discuss marijuana cures and give us an update on GMO labeling. Welcome back to the program, Robert.
Gary, it's good to be back with you. I appreciate the opportunity to let loose on the healing freedom that we need to re-embrace here in these United States.
Well, we've had many guests on the program that have talked about marijuana, medical marijuana, and its healing properties. Which disorders have you discovered in your investigations can be treated through marijuana?
Well, first of all, as a homeopath, we utilize cannabis indica and cannabis sativa. These are different forms of hemp, hash, or marijuana, as they call it, cannabis, medicinally in homeopathy. It's in the materia medica as well. But in terms of utilizing it herbally as it's plant-based, as it's designed by that which created us all, obviously a lot of controversy there regarding the propagandizing against this plant for a lot of reasons. I see it most beneficial in dealing with mental, emotional situations where the medical monopoly tries to direct folks towards SSRI or anti-anxiety meds. The ability to address this botanically with cannabis is pretty profound. Another area of benefit that is very significant is in pain management, reduction of specific or systemic pain issues, which again, we have a big controversy out there because all of the FDA-approved medicines, particularly those that are considered prescriptions, are being abused in tremendous fashion to the point where medical doctors are being treated as criminals, whether they're doing something wrong or not, regarding the control of these substances that cannabis may compete with from an over-the-counter or even a prescriptive kind of mechanism.
Well, you mentioned prescription drugs. I want to ask you about the side effects. Let's talk about side effects for a moment of cannabis versus side effects of traditional pharmaceuticals that you get at the pharmacy. You see the commercials on television that say, this is going to cause blindness and death and heart attack, and if you have an erection lasting more than 24 hours, see a doctor. And then when you go to an herbal source like cannabis, what kind of side effects could there be from a plant?
Well, the propaganda over the last decades is related to concerns for addiction or concerns for let's say the gateway to more severe drugs, whether they be illicit street drugs primarily is the way they focal pointed it. The reality is it seems to be largely non-addictive, maybe psychologically to some level, those that feel good utilizing it in many different ways they can use it. But when we compare the side effects, which are actually technically side benefits to the use of cannabis, we look at the prescriptive drugs and even over-the-counter pain medicines, for instance, and we see very dangerous interactions within the body. Even as we talk about over-the-counter drugs like Tylenol in particular, the acetaminophen, resulting in more ER hospitalizations for liver failure than for any other cause. And this goes across the spectrum. I was covering on my radio broadcast just the other day about teens and tweens innocently following their parents and what they do, reaching into the medicine cabinet and self-medicating for a headache. Why should a kid have a headache? That's a different issue altogether. But utilizing these over-the-counter and prescriptive medicines, which can be very addictive, very liver toxic and kidney toxic, and damaging in many ways to the GI tract, the gastrointestinal tract. You don't have any of that devastation, not even in a slight way or mild way, with the use of cannabis. Now, I'm not an advocate of heating up anything and breathing it in, outside of being maybe in a clean steam bath, for instance, with heated moist air. But the use of cannabis from the standpoint of burning it, that is smoking it into the lungs, there's evidence now that that is not as damaging that even I would have thought in terms of utilizing, for instance, tobacco smoke cigarettes, which are there's very little tobacco in that anymore with the regulation that's gone on. It's one of the least of the ingredients.
So with pain management, marijuana use, for example, I often wake up in the morning with a headache. You know, I sleep on the pillow wrong, and it's my natural inclination to go and grab a couple ibuprofen, and I wait for that to kick in. My headache goes away. Are you saying that simply taking a puff off of a marijuana cigarette would induce the same pain-relieving effects?
Well, I would prefer that you would basically eat it, ingest it in a raw state. That seems to have a lot of unique medicinal benefits that haven't been explored as much as the psychoactive potential of inhaling the heated plant. Or, you know, the other way, people will bake it into an oil, cook it lightly into a butter or a coconut oil, and ingest it that way, so you're not risking any concern with the lungs. Although, as I said, the reports now are showing very minimal to no lung damage because of the cannabinoids, as well as certain essential fatty acids that are brought in as well that seem to reduce inflammation and stimulate regeneration. So this is a profound plant. There are a lot of reasons that the U.S. government targeted for banning many decades ago, including they evidently hold patent on a number of different uses of the plant. And of course, the support that they have through FDA for the medical monopoly and patent-protected drugs is legendary. It's known, and that would minimize I'd say they'd have an imperative to say we've got to keep this cannabis out of the hands of the people, because they'll find that there'll be less reason to use the drugs that we have patented and we regulate with great profit.
So are these discoveries of the health benefits, have they been known for quite some time?
Well, some have been discussed over the years, but as you mentioned earlier, there are limited scientific inquiry because there are no grants available or limited grants available. And of course, the ability to even grow it, much less experiment on it, was so tightly controlled by a federal bureaucracy that you really couldn't innovate and push that envelope of science much over the last decade. So
well, clearly the envelope's being pushed now because we see a number of states who are approving medical marijuana. What is behind that? What is pushing that?
Well, I think it's a patient-centered focus. It's the recognition that we were, to some degree or a great degree, we were lied to. But we're recognizing, even within the modern medical circles who would embrace patent medicine, saying there's a problem here with our patent medicines that we can't overcome, including, as I said, addiction, liver failure, kidney failure, organ failure. We've got to look in other directions. And for more long-standing knowledge, the use of smoking cannabis for reducing the pressure in the eye related to some eye diseases. We talk about glaucoma. Also for navigating the side effects of chemotherapy, chemotoxic therapy in traditional oncology. But we're also seeing some benefits in terms of its ability to neutralize cancers, which is an unexpected side benefit that is just now being explored. So I think that the decentralization is on. These states have nullified federal marijuana laws, and they're moving into the scientific realm, some from a compassionate use perspective, but there's a lot of science yet to be uncovered regarding what this plant does and how extraordinary and how many uses it has.
Robert, aside from the illicit sale of cannabis, who else is profiting from the illegal status of the plant?
Well, from the illegal status of the plant, of course, it is the drug dealers, the underground economy, those that are profiting, and it's a very dangerous subculture to be in. It's very profitable. The drug cartels that you can look at in Central and South America certainly benefit by the criminalization of this plant. Of course, the private prison industrial complex is also another huge beneficiary of the criminal application of the laws that are clearly, from a federal level, unconstitutional. But the keeping up of this war on drugs has maintained a very, let's say, profitable prison-based economy. So there are a lot of folks profit. And of course, the drug industry itself profits because many of the people using cannabis are not using synthetic cannabinoids. They are actually using the plant in its whole unprocessed form. And because of that reason, that can't be, let's say, profited to the degree of patent protection for 18 or so years.
Robert, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to get the update on GMO labeling. So we'll be right back. We're talking with Robert Scott Bell, host of the Robert Scott Bell Show, right here on WHDT World News. Stay tuned.